Found out my sister was living in the cottage behind my back. Mom said, she needs it more. You were always the invisible one anyway. So I quietly stopped paying the bills. For weeks later, she texted, why's the power off? Fix it now. No please, no apology. I just replied, not my cottage. Not my problem. You ever walk into a room and feel like no one notices you're there? That was pretty much my life. My name's Marcus. I'm 31 years old, a school janitor in upstate New York, and the older brother nobody really sees. Growing up, the spotlight always belonged to my sister, Elise. She was the golden child, the family's little miracle. I was the one who did the chores, got decent grades, and never caused trouble. Elise? She could crash the car, lie about it, and somehow my mom would say it was the wind's fault. She's sensitive, Mom would say, as if Elise was a fragile doll made of sugar instead of a fully grown adult who didn't know how to check her bank account. And yeah, I kept my head down. Worked jobs through high school. Got hired on full-time at the elementary school as a janitor after graduation. Not glamorous, but it's a job. I've never been unemployed a single day in my adult life. Elise can't say the same. I've been covering parts of Mom's rent for years. Every time Elise overdrew her account or got a parking ticket she couldn't afford, guess who Mom called? Marcus, be a good big brother. Just this once. It's always, just this once. What they don't know, what they've never cared to ask, is that I've never had a savings account last more than 6 months. I've skipped dentist visits because Elise needed money for emergency flights or textbooks that somehow always turned out to be yoga retreats and Etsy crystal sets. But I never complained. I just kept sweeping hallways, fixing light bulbs, patching up holes in the cafeteria wall. And every other weekend, I drove out to my grandfather's cottage by the lake. That place was different, peaceful, honest. A tiny weathered cabin tucked between pines with a dock that creaked under your feet and a view of the water that made you forget the rest of the world existed. My grandfather, Papa Joe, lived there for the last 15 years of his life, and I was the one who kept the place standing. I painted the walls, cleaned out the gutters, replaced the water pump when it froze over one brutal winter. I drove out after storms to check for damage, paid for pest control, kept the wood stove in good shape. He never asked. I just did it. Because he was the only one who saw me. Papa Joe would clap a hand on my shoulder and say, you've got the old man's work ethic, kid. That's worth more than a charm smile. That man knew Elise couldn't boil pasta without breaking something. Still, he treated us both kindly. But with me, it was different. He noticed things. Noticed when I shaved off half my paycheck for bills that weren't mine. Noticed when I was running on fumes but still showed up with tools and gloves. He never said it directly, but he saw it all. The last summer before he passed, we sat on the dock as the sun went down, and he told me, some people are born to be noticed. Others, they're the ones who make sure the lights stay on. Don't let this world trick you into thinking one matters more than the other. When he died, I grieved hard, not just because he was gone, but because he was the only one who ever treated me like I mattered. And deep down, I held on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, that little lakeside cottage he loved so much, maybe he left it to me. Not out of favoritism, but because he knew I kept it alive, knew it was the one place that ever felt like mine. I didn't tell anyone about that hope. Not Mom, not Elise, definitely not Elise. I just kept going. Janitor by day, silent benefactor by night. Brother, son, ghost. But the cottage? That was the flicker in the dark. That was my maybe. I was mopping the hallway outside the third-grade classrooms when my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a Tuesday, right after lunch. The kind of day where the floors were sticky with juice boxes and half-chewed gummy bears. I pulled off a glove and checked the screen. Mom. I almost let it go to voicemail. We weren't on talk during the day terms. Usually, if she called while I was working, it meant Elise needed something bail, gas money, an apology made on her behalf. But something told me to answer. Hey, I said, keeping my voice low. Kids were lining up for recess just down the hall. She didn't bother with a greeting. Elise is moving into the cottage this weekend, she said, like she was telling me the weather. You'll need to drop off your key. I froze. I stood there, mop dripping onto the linoleum, the world suddenly too quiet. What? I said, my voice sounding far away in my own ears. The lake house, she said, sighing like I was being difficult. It's Elise's now. She inherited it. The lawyer called. Everything's official. No, I said, that can't be right. Well, she said, sharper now, maybe if you had done something with your life, you wouldn't be so shocked. Elise needs a fresh start. She's had a hard year. A hard year. Elise had a hard year, every year. This one included a failed online candle business, 2 boyfriends in 3 months, and a DUI that I paid the fine for. I was the one who fixed the cracked wall after she threw a lamp during her last breakup. I was the one who paid the taxes on the cottage when Papa Joe got too sick to keep up with them. I opened my mouth to ask why, to remind her that I had kept that place alive for a decade, that I was the one who cleared the leaves, patched the roof, shoveled the snow when Papa Joe fell and couldn't do it himself. But nothing came out. Mom wasn't looking for a discussion. She was telling me how it was. Elise is going to turn it into something nice, she added, like that was some sort of comfort, maybe a retreat, something spiritual. I hung up without saying goodbye. I stood in that hallway for a long time, the mop still in my hand, staring at nothing. My chest felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside me with a shovel. I made it through the rest of my shift like a robot, nodded when teachers passed me, took out the trash, scrubbed a stain off the lunchroom table that looked like chocolate milk and smelled like something worse. By the time I got home that night, Elise had already posted a picture. It was the dock, my dock, Papa Joe's dock. The sky was pink and orange behind her, and she was barefoot, holding a wine glass like a model on a magazine cover. Starting my dream life sparkles dizzy #healing journey #lakeside living. Not a single mention of our grandfather. Not a word about the man who lived and died in that house. Just hashtags and vibes. The comments were all the same. You deserve this. Finally, that view. And me? I hadn't even been invited to the housewarming. There wasn't going to be a housewarming. Not for me. No thank you. No mention. No recognition. Just an unspoken message so loud I couldn't ignore it anymore. You don't matter. That night, I sat in the dark on my back porch, staring at nothing while the world moved on without me. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't do anything, really. I just sat there, feeling the slow, quiet shift inside me, like something had finally cracked open. And I knew this much. I was done hoping. 2 days later, my phone buzzed again. Elise, hey, can you come fix the Wi-Fi at the cottage? The router's blinking and I don't have time to deal with it, weary face. Also, do you still have the login info? No greeting. No apology. No mention of the fact that she'd inherited the only place I ever gave a damn about. I stared at the screen for a long minute. Then I locked my phone and tossed it on the kitchen table without replying. That was the first time I ignored her. It felt weird, not satisfying, not dramatic, just new, like tasting something bland after a lifetime of salt. That night, she texted again. Elise, hello? I know you're probably busy cleaning some school toilets, but this is important. I work from home now, okay? I need the internet. Can you be normal for once and just do what you always do? Still, I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my laptop, logged into the utilities account, and canceled the autopay for the cottage's electric and water. I'd been covering those bills for almost 2 years, quietly, automatically. Papa Joe's name stayed on the statements until he passed, and then I just kept paying. Habit, I guess. Or maybe hope. Hope that one day, that little cottage would be mine. But now it was Elise's dream life. Let her fund it. 3 days later, I got a frantic voicemail. Elise's voice, shrill and angry, nearly blew out my speaker. What the hell, Marcus? The power's off. I had a call scheduled and everything shut down. This isn't funny. You're being a child. Just fix it already. I know you still have access to the accounts. Then came the texts. Elise, seriously, this is messed up. Elise, I have a right to live here, you know. You don't get to sabotage me. Elise, Mom says you're acting weird. She's calling you tonight. She didn't. The next morning, I was brushing my teeth when I heard pounding at the front door. I didn't need to look. I already knew. She banged like she was entitled to the walls. I opened the door halfway. Elise stood there in oversized sunglasses and a cropped hoodie that probably cost more than my week's groceries. She looked furious and tired. What the hell is your problem? She said, pushing past me like she still lived there. I don't remember inviting you in, I said, shutting the door behind her. She spun around. You think this is funny? Turning off the power? Ignoring me? What are you trying to do, Marcus? I leaned against the counter, calm, not because I wasn't mad, but because I'd never seen her this off balance before. She wasn't used to being ignored. You're on the lease now, I said. It's your name, your house. That's not what I asked, she snapped. I don't pay bills for places I don't live in, I said. Seems fair. Her jaw tightened. So this is revenge, huh? Because I got the house? Grow up. I almost laughed. Grow up. I repeated. She folded her arms. This is petty. You're acting like some bitter little janitor with a martyr complex. And just like that, she said it out loud. The thing they all thought. The thing that kept me in my place for years. I didn't respond. I just walked to the door, opened it, and waited. Elise stared at me. You're not serious. I was. She stomped out, flipping her hair like a teenager. Right before she stepped off the porch, I finally spoke. Not my place, I said. Not my problem. That night, I sent one text. Just one line. To Elise. You wanted a fresh start. Pay your own bills. Then I blocked her number. By morning, the messages started pouring in from Mom. Mom, Marcus, really? You're being cruel. Mom, your sister is struggling. You should be helping her. Mom, don't be heartless. You've always been the stable one. Stable, reliable, invisible. I didn't reply. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. It started with a story on Elise's Instagram. A black screen, white text. Some people will watch you suffer and smile. Even family. Then a photo of her curled up on the couch with a blanket, looking tragic. The caption read, "Power's still out. Wi-Fi's dead. I guess some people just enjoy being cruel broken art." I wasn't tagged, but I didn't need to be. Everyone knew who she meant. The messages started trickling into my inbox that afternoon. People I hadn't heard from in years suddenly had a lot to say. Dude, what's going on with Elise? Why are you being like this? Seriously, man? That's your sister. One girl I went to high school with, someone I barely remembered, sent me a 3-paragraph rant about family loyalty and healing trauma. Meanwhile, Elise was posting like she was running a PR campaign. Grainy photos of candles, her face in shadow. Vague captions like, "It's always the quiet ones who hurt you the most. People can look stable on the outside and still be rotten inside." Then came the kicker, a screenshot of a Venmo request. From her to me, for $342.66. Caption, "Since you like to ghost, here's the bill. Pay up." It wasn't just pathetic, it was public. I didn't even flinch. But the messages kept coming. Mom called. I didn't answer. She showed up the next morning. I spotted her through the peephole before I opened the door, arms crossed, mouth already tight with disapproval. She didn't even wait for an invitation before stepping inside. "This has gone far enough," she said. I leaned against the kitchen counter, arms folded. "Has it?" She blinked at the sarcasm, like it caught her off guard. "Elise is scared," she said. "She's not used to handling things alone." "That's the problem," I said. She ignored that. "She's posted about you online. People are talking." "So?" She threw up her hands. "Do you want everyone thinking you're some kind of heartless monster?" I looked her in the eye. "Are you here to ask about the truth? Or just to manage the optics?" She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried a new angle. "You've always been the responsible one, Marcus. The one we could count on. Why are you suddenly acting like this?" "Because it's not sudden," I said. "It's just the first time I've stopped pretending." She frowned. "Pretending what?" I walked to the table, pulled out a chair, sat down slow. "That any of you ever appreciated me," I said. "That Elise's messes were just accidents. That I wasn't the backup plan every single time she fell apart." Mom crossed her arms. "Don't be dramatic. This is about a house, a couple of bills. It's not the end of the world." I looked up at her, dead calm. "It's not a house," I said. "It's a pattern." She froze. I continued. "It's 20 years of being the invisible one, of getting called stable while Elise was called special, of patching holes in her life while being told I was just a janitor." "You're twisting things." "No," I cut in. "I'm just saying them out loud." The silence between us stretched long and tight. "You're breaking this family," she said finally. "No," I said. "I'm letting it break. It's been cracked for years." She didn't know what to say to that. After a long pause, she sighed. "So what now? You just cut us off? For good?" I stood up, opened the door. "I don't know," I said. "But I'm not fixing things that never saw me as a person." She walked out without another word. That night, I watched Elise's latest post. A blurry photo of a half-lit candle and a bottle of boxed wine. When your own brother would rather see you suffer than lift a finger, broken heart. But don't worry. Karma's got a schedule. I stared at the screen. Then I laughed. Not bitter, not angry. Just, finally done. It was a Tuesday when the envelope showed up in my mailbox. A plain white windowed letter from the Lake County Municipal Office. For a second, I thought it was junk mail. Then I saw the words printed in bold. Notice of property infraction. Parcel hashtag 082-17. LK. My stomach dropped. I ripped it open right there on the porch. Inside, 2 printed pages and a fine sheet. Unpermitted construction. Lapsed inspection. Trash accumulation. A handwritten note in the corner. Spoke with listed manager, Marcus Brennan. Wait, what? Manager? I blinked at the letter. My name was listed on the second page as the primary point of contact for the property. Elise's new cottage. My old dream. I hadn't submitted anything. I hadn't spoken to anyone. I hadn't even set foot near that house in weeks. And then I understood. Elise had listed me. Used my name, my address, my email. Probably figured I'd never notice, or that I'd just fix it, like always. I stood there on the porch, letter trembling in my hand, heart thudding in my chest. Then I went inside and picked up my phone. There was one number I hadn't dialed in over a year, Papa Joe's attorney, Mr. Dinner. He had a sleepy little office near the courthouse. Handwritten notes, legal pads stacked up like towers, and a wall calendar from 2017 still hanging behind his desk. But he always knew the fine print. I left a message that morning. He called me back that afternoon. "Marcus," he said, warm as ever. "I wondered when I'd hear from you." I didn't waste time. "Elise says she inherited the cottage," I said. "I just got a county notice with my name on it." There was a pause. Then he sighed. "Son," he said, "she didn't inherit it." "Not really." My jaw clenched. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said, "your grandfather set up a conditional trust. He left the house to Elise temporarily, under a 1-year term. There were requirements." "What kind of requirements?" "She had to maintain the property. No code violations, no subletting, no changes to the structure without permits. If she didn't meet those, the trust reverts to you." Immediately, I sat down on the edge of my couch, heart racing. Why didn't anyone tell me? He made a sound like a shrug over the phone. "Your grandfather asked me not to." "Why?" "Because he wanted to see what Elise would do when no one else was footing the bill," he said. "He told me, Marcus already proved himself. Let's see if Elise can do the same." I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. "So, it's mine. If she violated the terms." "Yes," he said. "And if you've got that notice," she did, "you can reclaim it. I'll send over the paperwork." That night I sat on the floor of my living room with a box of old files and the trust documents printed out in front of me. I read every word, twice. The house was mine. It had always been meant for me. Elise was just the test, and she failed. She didn't even know it yet, but her dream life was built on borrowed time, and I was about to take it back. 2 days after I got the trust documents, I printed the notice of code violations and added a cover letter. I slipped everything into a manila envelope, addressed it to the Lake County Property Compliance Office, and dropped it into the mailbox outside the school where I worked. It felt small, ordinary, but I knew exactly what I was doing. By Friday, I got confirmation. My documents were received, and the trust had been validated. As of that morning, I was the legal owner of the lakeside cottage. Elise had 30 days to vacate, unless she'd racked up violations, which she had. The council gave her 2 weeks. That evening, my phone buzzed. "Elise, are you kidding me? I just got this letter saying I have to move out? You knew this all along." I didn't respond, not with words, anyway. Instead, I logged into the same property portal I'd used to pay utilities for years and updated the contact information back to mine. Her name was still listed on a few expired forms, expired being the key word. Another text came through 10 minutes later. "Elise, you were just waiting, weren't you? This is so disgusting. You let me move in. You watched me decorate. You watched me build a life there. Build a life." She bought fairy lights and hung tapestries in the living room. She posted twice a day on Instagram like she was living in some healing retreat. Meanwhile, trash bags piled on the porch and a neighbor filed a noise complaint the first weekend she moved in. But sure, build a life. I still didn't answer. By the next day, the tone shifted. "Elise, Marcus, please, we can work something out. I didn't know about the trust. Mom didn't either. Let's just talk." "Okay." I ignored it. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. Instead of replying, I went to the hardware store. Bought new locks, paint samples, cedar planks for the dock. I started planning repairs, making lists, sketching out what the cottage could look like again. Clean, quiet, mine. That weekend, Elise posted another story. She was crying in her car. "I just found out I'm being forced out of my house," she sniffled, mascara running. "People I trusted, family, are trying to take everything from me. But I will not be broken." She tagged it #ToxicFamily and #Fighter. The comments poured in. "You got this, girl. Don't let the haters win." I sat on my porch with a beer and watched the video twice. Then I turned off my phone and started drawing up blueprints for a screened-in porch. Monday, the eviction notice was posted on the front door of the cottage. A neighbor, an older guy named Dennis who used to fish with Papa Joe, sent me a picture. "Dennis, about time, kid." Elise texted me again that night. "Elise, you're going to regret this." No emojis, no hashtags, just rage. That's how I knew it was real now. She wasn't shocked. She was unraveling, and it was only going to get worse. But I didn't reply, because I was finally standing in my own life. And for once, Elise was the one on the outside looking in. The call came at 9:47 p.m. I was at work, sweeping up after the spring choir recital. A few kids were still packing up sheet music while I was locking the back exit when my phone started buzzing in my pocket. "Elise." I stared at the screen. I hadn't spoken to her in over a week. Part of me didn't want to pick up, but something told me to answer. I slid my thumb across the screen and held it to my ear. She didn't say hello. She screamed, "If I can't have it, no one can." Then she hung up. The line went dead. My body went cold. For a few seconds, I just stood there, the mop handle still gripped in one hand, my heart thudding hard against my ribs. I tried to tell myself she was bluffing, being dramatic, lashing out, but I knew her voice, and she wasn't bluffing. I dropped everything, jumped in my car, and drove. The lake was 20 minutes away. I made it in 15. And when I turned down the gravel road and came around the final bend, I saw the sky lit orange in the distance. Smoke rose in thick columns behind the trees. A glow pulsed like a heartbeat behind the pine line. By the time I pulled up, fire trucks were already there. Flashing lights, hoses uncoiled in the dirt. The roof had collapsed on the west side. The back window had blown out, glass glittering across the lawn. Flames still licked the top edge of the front porch. I slammed the door and ran toward the nearest firefighter. "I own this place," I said, breathless. "What happened?" He pulled off his helmet, face slick with sweat and smoke. "You Marcus Brennan?" "Yeah." He pointed toward a woman in a windbreaker holding a clipboard. "Talk to her." Investigators already filed preliminary notes. I walked over, numb. The woman looked up from her papers as I approached. "You're the owner?" "Yeah." She flipped through her notes, calm and professional. "Looks like a neighbor called it in around 8:55. They saw a woman leaving the property in a hurry. Said she was loading bags into a car, small hatchback, silver or gray. About 5 minutes after she pulled away, smoke started pouring from the back windows. I swallowed hard. Did anyone see her face? Not clearly, but she left in a rush, fast enough to draw attention. She handed me a printed summary. Based on what we've seen, it looks intentional. Space heater running with the windows open. Gas can in the kitchen. Ignition point was right behind the living room couch. We're treating it as suspected arson. I couldn't even feel the air. Suspected arson. I looked past her to the house. What used to be the house. The porch was blackened. The screen door half melted. The dock lights I'd installed 5 years ago were flickering, wiring burned through. And in the middle of it all, smoke curling through the beams, the old front steps Papa Joe used to sit on gone. It was like watching a grave burn. But I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just stood there, as still as the trees, while water hissed against the ashes. Elise had done it. Not legally, not proven. But I knew. The call, the voice, the threat. She didn't just take something from me. She tried to destroy the one place that ever made me feel whole. Not because she needed it, but because she couldn't stand to see me have it. And now it wasn't a family feud. It was a crime scene. It didn't take long. 2 days after the fire, Elise tried to sue me. Not in criminal court, she wasn't that bold, but in small claims. She filed some nonsense about emotional distress, wrongful eviction, and wanted reimbursement for the furniture she claimed had burned in the fire. The court clerk told me over the phone with a sigh, "It'll be dismissed." She didn't even fill out the form correctly. I didn't even need to show up. And I didn't. The judge tossed it without a hearing. But what did move forward was the fire investigation. The rural insurance office flagged the claim immediately. Their adjuster found the gas can before the fire marshal even finished his report. There were multiple points of origin, none of them consistent with an accident. And then the neighbor came forward, Dennis, Papa Joe's old fishing buddy. "I saw her," he told the investigator. "She was in such a hurry, she dropped one of the bags. Looked like a laptop. I tried to call out, but she peeled off like she was late to a funeral." 2 more neighbors confirmed the same. One had footage from a trail cam. I didn't even need to press charges. The county did it for me. They arrested Elise 3 weeks later. Arson, destruction of property, reckless endangerment. When I got the call, I didn't even flinch. Just stared at the wall, then nodded once. That evening, Mom showed up at my apartment. She didn't knock. She just walked in, like she always had. Like nothing had changed. Her eyes were red, but she wasn't crying. "Not yet. She's in jail," she said. "I know," I said, leaning against the kitchen counter. "I got the call." "You could stop this," she said, her voice already breaking. "You don't have to press charges. You could talk to the prosecutor. It doesn't have to end like this." I stared at her. "Elise tried to burn down a house," I said. "My house." She wasn't thinking clearly, Mom whispered. She was overwhelmed. "She poured gasoline on the floor," I said. "That's not confusion. That's destruction." She stepped closer. "She's your sister. She could have killed someone," I said. "What if a firefighter got hurt? What if Dennis was on his porch when she lit the match?" She made a mistake. I took a breath, cold and deep. She made a choice. Mom's mouth trembled. She was lost. She didn't know what else to do. I looked her straight in the eye. "If Papa Joe had still been in that house," I said, slow and steady, "would you still be asking me to forgive her?" She didn't answer. She just stood there, her hands shaking, her lip pressed tight like she wanted to scream or sob, but couldn't decide which. Then she said it. "You've become so cruel." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't shout. I just looked her in the face and said, "No, I've just stopped cleaning up the cruelty of others." For a long moment, she stood there, Then she turned and walked out. No goodbye, no apology, just the sound of the door clicking shut behind her. I stood there in the silence. No guilt, no rage, just a strange stillness I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't cruel. I was done. 9 months. That's how long it took. 9 months of gutting the place, down to the studs, of hauling out burned insulation and broken beams, of sanding soot from floorboards that could be saved and replacing the ones that couldn't. 9 months of sweat, splinters, quiet mornings, and long evenings with nothing but the sound of the lake and the creak of old wood settling into new life. I did it myself. No contractors, no volunteers, no one offering to help me in exchange for stories or sympathy. Just me, a toolbox, and a stack of Papa Joe's old notes about the house. I found one tucked behind a shelf that somehow hadn't burned. A list in his scratchy handwriting. Things to fix before winter. Caulk the windows, clean the chimney, replace porch light. I framed it, hung it above the front door when I finished. The place wasn't fancy. It wasn't modern. I didn't care. It was quiet, solid, clean. I kept the dock, rebuilt the steps, planted wildflowers along the edge of the property, just like he used to. I even brought in the same kind of chipped coffee mugs he kept by the sink. Mismatched, all different colors, no two the same. I didn't post photos, didn't tell anyone I'd moved in. I just went, moved my bed into the corner bedroom that faced the water, put a small table by the window, set up a chair on the porch with a good view of the trees, and I started waking up with the sun. No texts, no demands, no one calling me at work asking me to wire over money, just for now. Just birds, water, the hum of life returning. Sometimes I'd find myself sitting on the dock, just like I did when I was a kid, legs dangling over the edge. The water's still cold, even in summer. I'd listen to the wind in the pine needles and think about all the years I spent waiting to be seen, to be chosen, to be enough. And then one morning I realized I didn't need to be any of that. I was already whole. The people who had treated me like a safety net never came around again. Elise was out on bail, living God knows where. Mom never showed up after that last conversation. And for once, I didn't chase them, didn't try to patch it, didn't explain myself. The cottage stood quietly behind me, not asking for anything except care. And I gave it that, not because I had to, but because it was mine. Every so often, someone from town would ask if I ever regretted cutting ties. "Don't you miss your family?" they'd say. And I'd think for a second before answering. Sometimes, I'd reply, but missing someone isn't the same as needing them. I'd let that hang in the air a moment. Then I'd add, with no bitterness in my voice, sometimes walking away isn't cruel. It's survival. And that was the truth. The real inheritance wasn't the house. It was the peace that came after the fire. And I'd earned every single inch of it.